Hello students, today I am going to discuss about introduction to CSS. Basically it is the part of the subject web designing KCS 052 and this topic is under the unit 3 and this unit is dedicated for the CSS. So basically today I talk about introduction part. So CSS is basically it is full form is cascading style sheet. And for the purpose of CSS is to display the HTML elements in a very decent way. Basically, it will create a decent look and feel of any HTML page. So therefore, we are using the CSS. So in this lecture, our concentration will be how to use the CSS in the HTML and what is the basic part of writing the CSS. So first of all, what you can do with the CSS? With the help of CSS, you can control the color of the text. You can give the style of the fonts and you can provide the multiple paragraph related styling. You can resize the columns. You can give the background images also and colors. You can provide in the text. You can have many different layout designs with the help of the CSS. And display in different devices also. You can set the screen size and variety of other effects for the different devices. So basically the purpose of CSS is to provide a very good look and feel for any web page and it is applicable for any type of devices. Now advantages of CSS when you apply the CSS any web page, it will save your time. Because if you write the CSS once and you can reuse the same CSS in multiple pages. So loading time will be less. It will be fast. The page load will be faster. Do not need to write HTML tag attributes. Basically, if you are going to set a color of any HTML tag, then you need to use the color attribute of the HTML tag. But in case of CSS, you just write one rule for a tag and you can apply it to all the different tags also. Very easy maintenance. You can write a global change. One CSS is written for all type of HTML pages and you just make one change in one CSS. It will be effect in all the web pages. Now it provides a superior styles to HTML. CSS has a much wider array of attributes than HTML. So you can give a far better look to your HTML page in comparison to HTML attributes. Now, a very important part of CSS is it is applicable on multiple devices. Same CSS will work for mobile and it will work for desktop also and will work for the tab also. The screen size will be adjusted accordingly. So it can work on a variety of devices. Now CSS is also applicable for the global web standards because if you are using the web pages with the help of CSS, you are following the web standards and no need to write the HTML attributes. With the help of CSS attributes, you can write the web pages. Because as per the standard, writing the HTML attributes in the web pages is not good. It is deprecated and it's being recommended that use the CSS in the web pages. So these are the advantages of CSS. Now, how will you write the CSS? So there are two main parts for writing a CSS. One is selector, second is declarators. Declarators can be one and more than one. Now, purpose of selector is to select the HTML elements that you want to provide the style. And each declarator consists of two parts. One is attribute, second is value. Property basically is the style attribute. Like color is the property and you can provide a value to this color. That is called the value of the property. So whenever we are using the declaration, the first part has the property and second part has the value. Next is, this is basically the syntax of writing a CSS. First we write a selector. Here the selector name is h1. It is a HTML tag. Then we have multiple declarations. Now it is a declaration 1. It is a declaration 2. Now in the declaration we have a property as well as value. So name of the property is color. Then we are putting the colon here to separate the property and value and provide the value to this property. Here we are providing the value blue to the property color. Then to write the second declaration, we must use the semicolon here. And name of the property is font size and value is 12 pixel. So you can see in the syntax we have a selector, and after the selector you have to write starting of the curly bracket and ending of the curly bracket after the declaration. Now you can have one declaration also, and you can have more than one declaration also. Here we have two declaration, and within two declaration you have to use a semicolon, and to separate a property and value we can use the colon here. So basically it is a standard format for writing any CSS in the HTML page. Now look for an example. Now we are going to set the CSS for HTML tag P. P is the HTML element, and we have a two declaration. In the first declaration, we are setting the property for the color to red. In second declaration, we are setting the property text align to center and end of the CSS. Either you write all the declaration in one sentence or one line, or you write the declaration in different line. This is line 1, this is line 2, this is your choice. Both are applicable. Now, learning the main part of the CSS. When you're going to write the CSS, basically the two different way to writing the CSS. One is with the help of the ID selector. ID is basically specify the CSS for the unique element. When you want to give the CSS for a single element, then we can use the ID selector. ID selector uses the ID attributes of the HTML. When you define the ID selector, then you can use ID attribute of the HTML element to include the ID selector, ID CSS in your HTML page. And ID selector will start from the hash symbol. Now, this is an example of ID selector. By looking the hash, or you can say writing the hash, we are going to write the ID CSS, or you can say ID selector CSS. And name of the ID is para1. It is a user defined. This para1 is a user defined, and hash symbol indicate that it is a ID. So para1 is an ID, and this ID consists of two declaration. One is text alignment center and color equal to red. So in this small code, we have defined an ID, and name of the ID is para1 with two declaration, setting the properties text aligned to center and setting the property color equal to red. Now look for the example. In this example, it is a HTML page, and we have included CSS in the head section. This is a head section. Now to include any style, or you can say CSS in the head section, we must use the style tag. Within the style tag, we have defined an ID. Name of the ID is para1. With the help of hash symbol, we can understand it is a ID selector. And para1 is a user defined. Now within this ID, we have set the two properties, text align and color. Now I want to use this CSS in my HTML tag. So in this example, we are using this ID in HTML tag P. Now use this ID, you must use the ID attribute of HTML element. And you set ID attribute of P element to the ID selector, and our name of the ID selector is para1. This part is very important. We have defined the ID selector, or you can say ID of the CSS, and we are using this ID selector name, that is para1, in a particular element where you want this CSS to be implemented. So in this example, P is the tag. In this first P tag, I want to use this ID selector. So you just use ID attribute. This ID attribute is the part of the HTML attribute. Then equal to within the double quotes, give the name of the ID. No need to use the hash here. Do not use the hash here because hash is only used to define the ID selector. That when you are implementing the ID selector, no need to use the hash symbol here. Now, when ID is set para 1, then hello world will be CSS will be applied. The CSS will be text align equal to center in color equal to red. Now, in this case, we are not using the ID selector. You can say we are not using the CSS. Then no need. There will be no effect in this paragraph. Only the effect will come in the first p tag where we are using the ID attribute. Now, second example, here we are using ID selector, hash symbol is there and name of the ID is red. But before the hash, we are using the h1. It is the HTML element. It indicates that this ID selector will work only in the h1 element because hash symbol is preceded by the h1, which is the HTML element. So it indicates that red is a ID selector. It is an ID of CSS and it will be only applicable in h1. If h1 will not present, then this ID selector is universal. You can use this ID in any element by writing the ID attribute. But just putting the HTML element, it means that this ID will applicable only in the h1 selector. So it is mentioned here, this ID is applicable in only h1 element. Now, one more way for defining the CSS is class selector. This is very important. Now, ID selector is applicable only single element, or you can say you want to give a unique feature to the HTML element. CSS selector will applicable for a group of selectors, for a group of HTML elements. So when you want a set of elements, there should be same type of CSS, then use the class. Again, I am specifying the difference between ID selector and class selector. In case of ID, it is applicable only the single element. In case of class, it is applicable on the group of elements. So to define the ID, to define the class selector, we are using the dot symbol. See the difference. For ID, we are using the hash symbol, and for the class, we are using the dot symbol. Then name of the class, it is also user defined. So this center is a user defined. You can give any name. So name of this class is center. I understand it is a class because we are using the dot here. Then starting of the CSS, ending of the CSS, and we have written only one declaration. Text align is the property and center is the value for this property, and this column separates both separates property and value, and semicolon is the end of the declaration. So we are defining a class. Name of the class is center. Next, we are using this class in an example. Here you can see a class is defined here and text align equal to center. Now I want to use this class selector in my HTML element. Then we are using the h1 symbol. For example, I want to use in h1 selector, h1 element. Then we use the class property and give the name of the class. So name of the class is already defined. It is a center. And this class attribute is the part of h1 element. This is class attribute is the part of HTML element. So class equal to center, and this text will be affected. It will be center aligned. Now same class you can use in the p tag also. P is the HTML element. We are using the class here and center aligned with the paragraph. So you can see the class selector is applicable on a group of HTML elements. So we have the h1 and p, two different elements we are applying the class, and same type of CSS will be applicable in both the HTML element h1 and p1. Now one important part, if we are using the p tag or any HTML tag before the dot symbol, it is a dot symbol. Before the dot symbol, then particular class will be applicable on only a specified HTML element. So in this example, The class center will applicable only in the P tag. Just see the previous example. No HTML element is mentioned here, but here the HTML element P is mentioned here. So the center class will be applicable only in the P element. So see the example in H1 we are using the class center. In P, class equal to center. So in case of H1 element, this class will not applicable, because we have dot symbol is preceded by the P elements. So this example is applicable only in the tag P. So it will have the effect on text align equal to center only in the P tag, not in the H1 tag. Next is a very important part. There are three ways for inserting a style sheet. So I talk about CSS should be used in HTML pages. So what are the different ways by which we can insert the CSS in HTML pages? The first is external CSS. Second is internal CSS. Third one is inline CSS. Or you can say different types of CSS. In other way we can say it. In case of external CSS, we have an external file of CSS and it will be stored with the .css extension. External file written only for one time, and it is applicable on all the web pages whenever you are including this external file. To include this external file in a web page, we must use the link tag. So example of link tag is obviously the link tag should be defined in the head section, and for example the name of my external CSS is mystyle.css. So use the link tag and use the href attribute to include the external file in a particular HTML page. Then you can use other attributes relation to define that this file is a style sheet, and you can define the type also, that is the text and CSS. So you must take care of this href attribute of link tag, in which you will define the name of the CSS file. Now external sheet can be written with any text editor. It has a extension of .css. Now what will be the content of external CSS? Here you can define the different declarations. So here we define three declarations. One is for HR HTML element color equal to blue. Then second declaration is for the P tag. We have three different CSS we can say, and HR is the HTML selector, P is the HTML selector, declaration is color blue. Now for the P HTML element, it is a selector, and the property and value is margin left 20 pixels. It is a declaration. Here the body is the HTML element, and the declaration is background image. We are setting the background image with the URL is mentioned here. So we have three CSS, one for HR, for P, and for body, and it is included in one external file. Whenever you make the color equal to red, it will be applicable in all the pages whenever this file is included in the HTML pages. Second type of style sheet is internal CSS. So internal CSS is written in a HTML page. Whenever you want to apply some CSS for a particular page, then you can use the internal CSS. Now internal CSS is written with the help of style tag, and style tag must be defined in the head section. Now it is an example. In the head section, we have defined the style sheet, style tag, and it is an internal CSS. Now same type of CSS we have written as we have written in the external style sheet. In external style sheet, these CSS are written in a separate file. Now all these CSS in the same file, that is called the internal CSS. We have defined the HR, P, and body HTML elements, and then we define the declarations to include the CSS in the HTML page. Third one is the important part is inline CSS. Whenever you want to give the CSS for a particular element, for one element or two element, not for the whole page, then we are using the inline CSS. Here you want to give the style only for the P tag. not for all p tag, only for single p tag, for unique feature, a particular tag, then we can use the inline CSS. That is, it will be within the same tag. So in this example, we are giving the p tag and just write the style attribute. No need to write the curly bracket here. Just use the double quotes and write the declarations. So the two declarations are mentioned. One is color, property name, yellow is the value. Second is margin left is the property name and value is 20 pixel. So basically this inline CSS is defined within the particular HTML element, and just use the style attribute of any element and give the style, write the CSS. This CSS is only applicable for the tag in which you have defined. So I have discussed the important ways to include the CSS in the HTML page, or you can say web page. First one is external. We have one external file, and in this one external file is included in HTML pages with the help of the link tag. And if you make any changes in the external file, it will affect on all the web pages. Second, we define the internal style sheet. In the external style sheet is included with the help of the style tag in the head section, and you can see we are writing the CSS within the style sheet, that is style tag. Third one is inline styles. This inline styles is written within a particular HTML elements with the help of style attribute, and just write the CSS. CSS will be applicable on the text. So far I discuss different ways to include the CSS. I discuss introduction of the CSS. I discuss what is the ID selector, what is the CSS, what is the class selector in the CSS, and there are three different ways for the CSS. One is external, second is internal, and third one is inline CSS. Now important part is what is the precedence among the style of the CSS. If you define the precedence, we can say inline takes the highest precedence over all other styles. So if you apply the same type of CSS or different type of CSS on one element, so inline CSS has the highest precedence, then the precedence will come for the internal CSS, then the precedence will come for the external CSS. So you must take care about if property is defined in external CSS, it can be overridden by the internal CSS and it can be overwritten by the inline CSS. Inline CSS has the highest precedence, then internal, then we have the external CSS. I hope you understand the introduction part of the CSS and how to write the CSS. Thank you very much.